Hello everyone, I'm Dane.
And I'm Kamraun. Welcome to the Malazan Brotherhood podcast, home of the most professional digressors.
Today we will be discussing Book 2, Chapter 5 of House of Chains, a novel in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. This is part 3 of our coverage of this chapter.
This podcast series is intended to be a companion to reading or listening to the books set in the Malazan universe. It's not a book review, and it is most definitely not a replacement to reading the books.
We will be covering the events of the books in a linear fashion. There will be spoilers for those who have not read the books. We will try not to spoil anything prior to us covering that portion of the respective book.
Today's episode contains no violence, and thus may be suitable for children. Now, I can't predict the future. That doesn't necessarily mean that there may not be some verbal attacks from co-host to co-host, but the book does not have any violence.
Yeah. So if you're following along, for yourself, I guess keep note that Chapter 5, Part 3 is the only episode so far that you might be able to have a child listen to. Our show is listener-supported. If you would like to support us, we would really appreciate that. You can do so by visiting our Patreon link on our website at horsefrogproductions.com. Currently, we are posting ad-free episodes on Patreon weekly.
Also, we'd really like to hear from you. Send any feedback or comments to contact@horsefrogproductions.com. All right, Chapter 5, Part 3. Pearl stood at the round table, leaning on both hands, his head lowered as he studied the scroll. The adjunct had departed half a bell past, her fist on her heels like a misshapen shadow. Lostara waited, arms crossed, with her back against the door through which Tavora and Gamut had left. She had held silent during the length of Pearl's perusal of the scroll, her anger and frustration growing with each passing moment. Finally, she'd had enough. Lostara said, "I will have no part in this. Return me to Tene Beralta's command." Pearl did not look up as he muttered, "As you wish, my dear. Of course I will have to kill you at some point. Certainly before you report to your commander. It's the hard rules of clandestine endeavors, I regret to say."
Do you think Pearl is serious? He's got a crush on Lostara, but he is a claw, and they are a certain way.
He loves no one more than himself. As much as he's into Lostara, I suspect he would indeed kill her to preserve his position.
Really?
I think so.
Okay.
This dalliance, I think he's like, yeah, I could probably find another woman somewhere else.
That's true.
He loves himself. He makes himself laugh. He's got his own jokes for himself.
I guess thinking back when he met Gamut for the first time and he makes a comment and that statement of held for a pause as though it was some grand joke that only he was privy to.
Yeah. And going back to a statement you made in the past, he loves to hear the sound of his own voice, it seems.
Yeah, he does. Okay, I guess he would.
What do you think?
Part of me would like to think he likes her, so he wouldn't. But I think you're probably right. He would just, he'd do it. He'd do it anyway.
Yeah.
Maybe he'd be sad as he's twisting the knife, but he'd do it anyway.
Yeah, I'm sorry to have to do this, but...
Yeah, got a smile on his face while he's doing it.
Lostara asked, "Since when are you at the adjunct's beck and call, Pearl?" Pearl glanced up and met her gaze, then said, "Why, ever since she unequivocally reasserted her loyalty to the Empress, of course." He returned his attention to the scroll. Lostara scowled and said, "I'm sorry, I think I missed that part of the conversation." Pearl replied, "Not surprising, since it resided in between the words actually spoken." He smiled at her and added, "Precisely where it belonged." With a hiss, Lostara began pacing, struggling against an irrational desire to take a knife blade to these damned tapestries and their endless scenes of past glories. She growled, "You will have to explain, Pearl." Pearl said, "And will that relieve your conscience sufficiently to return you to my side? Very well. The resurgence of the noble class in the chambers of imperial power has been uncommonly swift. Indeed, one might say unnaturally so. Almost as if they were receiving help. But who, we wondered. Oh, absurd rumors of the return of the Talons persisted. And every now and then some poor fool who'd been arrested for something completely unrelated went and confessed to being a Talon. But they were young, caught up in romantic notions and the lure of cults and whatnot. They might well call themselves Talons, but they did not even come close to the real organization, to Dancer's own, of which many of us Claw possessed first-hand experience. In any case, back to the matter at hand. Tavora is of noble blood, and it's now clear that a truly covert element of Talons has returned to plague us, and has been making use of the nobility, placing sympathetic agents in the military and administration, a mutually profitable infiltration. But Tavora is now the adjunct, and as such, her old ties, her old loyalties, must needs be severed. He paused to tap a finger on the laid-out scroll before him, then said, "She has given us the Talons, Captain. We will find this Bodden Younger, and from him we will unravel the entire organization.
This sounds quite presumptuous. Earlier, when Pearl asked if Bodden Younger was as good as Bodden the Senior, and they thought that he was, the fact that they think they will just unravel the entire organization seems pretty out there.
Yes, we, as readers, also have firsthand knowledge of what type of man Bodden is. I think they'd be sorely disappointed as their attempts to break him failed miserably.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe they think that they could covertly follow him to see who he's meeting with or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty far-fetched thing. I think, given what we know, Bodden would probably just die. I'm not giving you anything. You know, you can torture him, kill him, whatever. He's not going to give up anything.
Mm-hmm. I need to come back to a statement I made during last week's episode when you asked about the distinction between the claw and the talons. Okay. I mentioned that it made sense the nobles would make use of the talons to undermine the power of the Empress. This last passage makes me think it's the other way around, that the talon are in fact using the nobility to undermine the Empress.
Oh, okay.
Did you pick up on that as he's talking?
You're right, this last sentence, I didn't really put it together, but it does make more sense that way than the nobility using the talon, but the talon using them. Because I guess it's the same problem, right? The talon don't like the Empress.
Mm-hmm.
The claws don't like the talon. Yeah, that makes sense to me too. Yeah. Good pickup, Kamraun.
Integrity, sir.
Integrity.
Yeah. Lostara was quiet for a long moment, then said, "In a sense, then, our mission is not extraneous to the interests of the Empire after all." Pearl flashed a smile. Lostara continued, "But if so, why didn't the adjunct just say so?" Pearl said, "Oh, I think we can leave that question unanswered for the time being." Lostara grated, "No, I would have it answered now." Pearl sighed and said, "Because, my dear, for Tavora, the surrendering of the talons is secondary to our finding Felicin, and that is extraneous, and not only extraneous, but also damning. Do you think the Empress would smile upon this clever little scheme, the lie behind this all-too-public demonstration of the new adjunct's loyalty? Sending her sister to the Ordotaral mines. Hood take us all. That's a hard woman. The Empress has chosen well, has she not?" Lostara grimaced and thought, chosen well. Based on what, though? Then she said, "Indeed, she has." Pearl said, I agree. It's a fair exchange in any case. We save Felicin and are rewarded with a principal agent of the Talons. The Empress will no doubt wonder what we were doing out on the Odotaral Isle in the first place. Lostara said, "You'll have to lie to her, won't you?" Pearl's smile broadened as he replied, "We both will, lass, as would the adjunct and Fist Gamut if it came to that. Unless, of course, I take what the adjunct has offered me personally, that is." Lostara slowly nodded, saying, "You are at a loose end, yes. Out of favor with the Clawmaster and the Empress, eager to make reparations. An independent mission. You somehow latched onto the rumor of a true Talon and set off on his trail. Thus, the credit for unraveling the Talons is to be yours, and yours alone." Pearl corrected, "Or ours, if you so desire." Lostara shrugged, moved to his side, and said, "We can decide that later." "Very well, Pearl. Now, what are these details with which the adjunct has so kindly provided us?"
So sometimes I'm a little confused by Lostara. On one hand, she's saying she's for the Empress, she wants to be loyal, but then in this situation, it seems kind of sneaky, and she's okay with it. I guess as long as the terms are spelled out, she knows what she's getting into. Because this specific thing of earlier grading at doing something behind the Empress's back, she's just kind of like, all right, let's get on with this now. When Pearl says, you're going to have to lie to her too, before she was like, I don't want to do anything the Empress doesn't know about, and now she's okay with lying. What's your take on Lostara?
I think she's truly loyal to the Empress, number one. And then separately, the issues that you're bringing up about how she would take issue with lying to the Empress, it's a lie of omission pretty much. You know, like, to me, it's a lot like corporate speak, where
okay,
the executives, there's certain things going on and they're sugarcoating things and leaving things out to make things look a certain way. And I get all riled up. It's like politicians too. You get all riled up because you're like, no, this is bullshit. You're not saying the whole truth, or it's a partial thing, or it's twisted in a certain way, which is what Pearl is doing, right? He's twisting it in a way to rationalize it into Lostara's clean little bucket, if possible, to get her to go along with this. But at the end of the day, the adjunct is doing something that the Empress would frown upon.
Mm-hmm.
because she's supposed to have given up her sister to prove her loyalty. Now she's kind of going back on that.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see how Lestar processes this in the long run, I think.
Yeah.
But for the time being, maybe she's willing to go forward with it because she understands that the Talons are a large enough threat to the Empress that it makes sense to pursue Bodden, regardless of the Felicin piece.
Okay. So I guess that's how she's rationalizing it.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. But the Talons are against the Empress, so that's good enough for now.
Yeah, it's too big of a threat to leave out there because they're truly formidable, apparently. Okay. You think the Claw are bad enough, but the way Kalam beclowned them in Valis City, he's bleeding from a stab, had no weapons besides a blacksmith's knife. Mm-hmm. You know, he's running around
and
shirtless.
He's also not an adept. And a lot of the Claw were.
Yeah. Kalam is not a Talon. I get it. But I get the feeling that he is the type of person that would have been a Talon, given the chance, because they seem to be a little bit craftier.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we really don't have a lot to go off of besides Bodden. But, I mean, Bodden, he didn't really fit the mold of that assassin archetype.
Right.
Admiral Nock had been facing the hearth, his gaze on its cold ashes. At the sound of the door opening, he slowly turned, his expression as impassive as ever. The adjunct said, "Thank you for your patience." The Admiral said nothing, his level gaze shifting to Gamut for a moment. The midnight bell's muted echoes were only now fading. The Fist was exhausted, feeling fragile and scattered, unable to meet Nock's eyes for very long. This night he'd been little more than the adjunct's pet, or worse, a familiar. Tacitly conjoined with her plans within plans, bereft of even so much as the illusion of a choice. When Tavora had first drawn him into her entourage, shortly after Felicin's arrest, Gamut had briefly considered slipping away, vanishing in the time-honored tradition of Malazan soldiers who found themselves in unwelcome circumstances. But he hadn't, and his reasons for joining the adjunct's corps of advisors, not that they were ever invited to advise, had, upon ruthless self-reflection, proved less than laudable. He had been driven by is it macabre?
I always say macabre. Macabre.
Macabre.
It's a swallowed. What do they call that? A glottal?
Macabre. He had been driven by macabre curiosity. Good?
Is that how it's... I mean, did you look it up?
I did, but I mean, it's weird.
Let me listen. I want to listen. Google's saying macabre.
Is it? Mine didn't.
Macabre.
Really?
That's what my Google thing is saying. Are you using DuckDuckGo or something? Using some whack thing?
Holy... Wiktionary.
Oh, yeah. See, that's your problem. What the hell is a Wiktionary? You're going on to this crazy stuff. This is part of your whole Linux weirdness.
It's about privacy, Dane.
You're right. I'm sorry.
I don't want to be a sheep to be fleeced.
Right. Are you using standard messaging apps, though, instead of Signal or WhatsApp? So
he had been driven to macabre... Moving on. Number one, I would like to point out I was allegedly saying it correctly the first time, but I'm using Brave as my browser.
So they're saying macabre.
Macabre. So I was saying it right. Let's just go macabre.
Australians are saying macabre. Don't say macabre.
Hold on, let me ask Gemini.
Ask Gemini. Does it give you a sound thing? Will Gemini do that?
We'll try.
Make sure that there is one source is saying one thing and the other is saying a complete opposite.
Okay, in the U.S., it is most frequently pronounced with 2 syllables. Macabre. The British or traditional pronunciation is macabre. Erikson's Canadian. I'm going to say macabre.
Okay.
Because that's how I said it originally.
I wonder if you ever heard a interview with Erikson saying it, just like I always read it as Tavor.
That's a very unused word.
For a long time. Well, yeah, but I always read it as Tavor, but he's saying Tavora. I say Tist, he's saying Teist. So I'm wondering if maybe...
Oh, maybe that's where he got it from. Tavora macabre. Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, okay. Oh, look at you, Mr. Literary Analyst.
Listen, I'm doing what I can with my limited resources.
He had been driven by macabre curiosity. Tavora had ordered the arrests of her parents, had sent her younger sister into the horrors of the Odotaral mines. He thought, for her career's sake. Her brother, Ganoiz, had in some way been disgraced on Genebakis. He had subsequently deserted. Gamut thought, an embarrassment, granted, but surely not sufficient to warrant Tavora's reaction. Unless... There were rumors that the lad had been an agent of Adjunct Lorne's, and that his desertion had led, ultimately, to the woman's death in Darujistan. Yet, if that were true, then why did the Empress turn her royal gaze upon another child of the House of Perrin? Why make Tavora the new adjunct?
I love that thought. The time-honored tradition of disappearing.
It does seem to be baked into the DNA of Malazan culture, doesn't it? I mean,
It does.
It carries through everything.
Yep. Everybody's that just like, we're going to just slip away. We're just going to slip away.
Yeah. From the top down.
Yeah.
The old guard, apparently most of them are still alive. You know? I mean, who knows how many actually died. And then the soldiers all the way through the chain. We've had multiple examples of them trying to reinvent themselves, rename themselves.
Yep. It's good stuff.
Tavora said, "Fist Gamut." Gamut blinked and asked, "Adjunct?" Tavora replied, "Seat yourself, please. I would have some final words with you, but they can wait for the time being." Nodding, Gamut glanced around until he spied the lone high-backed chair set against one of the small room's walls. It looked anything but comfortable, which was probably an advantage, given his weariness. Ominous creaks sounded when he settled into the chair, and he grimaced. He muttered, "No wonder Pormqual didn't send this one off with all the rest." Nox said, "It is my understanding that the transport ship in question sank in the harbor of Malaz City, taking the late High Fist's loot with it." Gamut's wiry brows rose as he said, "All that way, just to sink in the harbor? What happened?" The Admiral shrugged and said, "None of the crew reached the shore to tell the tale." Gamut thought, "None?" Nox seemed to note his skepticism, for he elaborated. "Malaz Harbor is well known for its sharks. A number of dories were found, all awash but otherwise empty." The adjunct had, uncharacteristically, been permitting the exchange to continue, leading Gamut to wonder if Tavora had sensed a hidden significance to the mysterious loss of the transport ship. Now she spoke. "It remains, then, a peculiar curse. Unexplained founderings, empty dories, lost crews. Malaz Harbor is indeed notorious for its sharks, particularly since they seem uniquely capable of eating victims whole, leaving no remnants whatsoever." Yeah, that's a very poignant observation, going back to what we were just saying.
Exactly.
Nock replied, "There are sharks that can do just that. I know of at least 12 ships on the muddy bottom of the harbor in question." The adjunct drawled, "Including the Twisted, the old Emperor's flagship, which mysteriously slipped its moorings the night after the assassinations, then promptly plummeted into the deeps, taking its resident demon with it." A resident demon? Tell me more.
Yeah.
What demon is trapped on a ship and just stays with it? That's interesting. Nox said, "Perhaps it likes company. The island's fishermen all swear the harbor's haunted, after all. The frequency with which nets are lost." Tavora's eyes were resting on the dead hearth as she cut in, "Admiral, there is you and 3 others, all who are left." Gamut slowly straightened in his chair. He thought, 3 others. High Mage Tashrin, Dujek One-Arm, and Whiskey Jack. 4. Gods, is that all now? Tattersail, Bellardan, Nightchill, Duiker, so many fallen. Admiral Nock was simply studying the adjunct. He had stood against the wrath of the Empress, first with Cartharon Crust's disappearance, then Urko's and Amaron's. Whatever answers he had given, he had done so long ago. After a long moment, Tavora said, "I do not speak for the Empress, nor am I interested in details. What interests me is a matter of personal curiosity. I would seek to understand, Admiral, why they abandoned her." There was silence filling the room, growing towards something like an impasse. Gamut leaned back and closed his eyes. He thought, "Ah, lass, you ask questions of loyalty, as would someone who has never experienced it. You reveal to this admiral what can only be construed as a critical flaw. You command the 14th Army, adjunct, yet you do so in isolation, raising the very barricades you must needs take down if you would truly lead. What does Nock think of this now? Is it any wonder he does not?" Gamut's thoughts were interrupted as the Admiral said, "The answer to your question lies in what was both a strength and a flaw of the Emperor's family, the family that he gathered to raise an empire. Kelonved began with but one companion, Dancer. The two then hired a handful of locals in Malaz City and set about conquering the criminal element in the city. I should point out that criminal element happened to rule the entire island. Their target was Mok, Malaz Island's unofficial ruler, a pirate and a cold-blooded killer." So, a fun little bit of history here. Tattersail revealed in Gardens of the Moon that she was actually Mok's lover before he was killed during this whole takeover. It's interesting. You wouldn't think of her as being involved in the pirate life, you know?
Yeah, that's true. Given, I guess, her place in the mage cadre, but I guess all these people have kind of a murky background.
Yeah.
Which also kind of makes their backstory kind of fun and mysterious. I don't know. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Tavora asked, "Who were these first hirelings, Admiral?" Nock replied, myself, Kamraun, Dujek, a woman named Hall, my wife. I had been first mate to a corsair that worked the sea lanes around the Napan Isles, which had just been annexed by Unta and were providing a staging point for the Untan king's planned invasion of Kartul. We'd taken a beating and had limped into Malaz harbor, only to have the ship and his crew arrested by Mock, who was negotiating a trade of prisoners with Unta. Only Kamraun and Hall and I escaped. A lad named Dujek discovered where we were holed up, and he delivered us to his new employers, Kellanved and Dancer.
A lad? Dujek? Is this one of those, was he ever a boy?
Yeah. If you think about it, he lost his arm during the takeover of Kwantali.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, that was when they were fighting the Wiccans back in the day.
Okay.
He gave Bolt the scar on his face, and Bolt cut off his arm.
Was it Bolt or was it taken off by a horse? Am I misremembering something? I thought he got chomped.
Let's look it
by
up.
A horse. Okay.
Dane, look up that detail.
Lost his limb during the Malazan Empire campaigns against the Wiccan clans. During a battle, Dujek fought with Bolt, delivering a sword stroke that permanently scarred Bolt's face. Simultaneously, Bolt's horse bit Dujek's arm.
Okay, good memory, Dane. Yeah. So Bolt's horse took Dujek's arm off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you and Billy had talked about the nasty disposition of these horses, and
yeah, that sounds right.
That's how he lost
glazing
it.
These feral horses that are like just biting people's faces and arms off.
Yeah, nasty little creatures.
Yeah. So that means Bolt had to be pretty old too. But going back to the original point, Dujek being a lad, yeah, he must have been a teenager, or maybe even younger when this was going down.
Mm-hmm.
Gamut asked, was this before they were granted entry into the Dead House? Nock said aye, but only just. Our residency in the Dead House rewarded us with, as is now clearly evident, certain gifts, longevity, immunity to diseases, and other things. The Dead House also provided us with an unassailable base of operations. Dancer later bolstered our numbers by recruiting among the refugee Napans who'd fled the conquest, Cartheron Crust and his brother, Urko, and Surly, Lasine. 3 more men were to follow shortly thereafter. Talk Elder, Dasim Ultor. Man, that's the first time his name came up in this book, and I don't have Billy to whisper Dasim Ultor anymore.
Do I need to pick up that moniker?
No.
That's Billy's thing.
That's the first time it's hitting my heart a little bit, you know?
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay, Dane. Dasim Ultor, who was, like Kellanved, of Dalhani's blood, and a renegade high septarch of the Drek cult, Tashrin. And finally, Duiker. He half smiled at Tavor, then continued, the family, with which Kellanved conquered Malaz Island. Swiftly done, with minimal losses. Gamut thought minimal, then said, your wife.
I thought this was a cool tidbit about the Dead House giving them certain gifts, longer life, immunity to diseases. I don't know if that was ever explicitly stated before.
Not that I've been aware of.
Okay.
The only ones we knew that were given any gifts, per se, were Kellanved and Dancer, and we assume that's because they took those roles of the heads of the House of Shadow. It was never really understood that anybody else involved was even going into Dead House. Right. This is new to me that they were actually living there.
Yeah.
The fact that they could even get in is interesting.
That was going to be my next thing that I think is pretty cool, because the way we thought is kind of the house had to almost invite you in.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that it was like, yeah, you've got a whole crew of people that is
criminals.
Like coming and going. Yeah, criminals that are coming and going in the house. And I always kind of assumed it was like one person or 2 people granted entry, and that's it. Everybody else, the door doesn't open for.
Yeah, and Perrin is special. He can do whatever he wants, but everybody else, I was like you. I thought it's pretty much the keeper gets in there, stays in there, and then, but maybe there's more rules around the Azath than we understand at this point.
Yeah. Also, these folks that were recruited first, they're all super legendary. Kellanved and Dancer had chosen wisely.
All right. That's a Indiana Jones Last Crusade
Indiana Jones,
right
yeah.
there. Okay.
Yeah.
So this makes me think that they were nearing some type of ascendant adjacent capabilities are being described here.
Yeah, like the whole crew of them, right?
The whole crew, yes.
Yeah.
We'll come back to this later in this section, but it makes me think of Coltane's interaction with Gessler in a way.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We'll talk about it then.
Yeah, all right.
After a long moment, Nock shrugged and said, yes, her. This is in relation to Gamut mentioning his wife. To answer you, adjunct, unknown to the rest of us, the Napans among us were far more than simple refugees. Surly was of the royal line. Cartheron and Urko had been captains in the Napan fleet, a fleet that would have likely repelled the Untans if it hadn't been virtually destroyed by a sudden storm. As it turned out, theirs was a singular purpose, to crush the Untan hegemony, and they planned on using Kellanved to achieve that. In a sense, that was the first betrayal within the family, the first fissure. Easily healed, it seemed, since Kellanved already possessed imperial ambitions, and of the two major rivals on the mainland, Unto was by far the fiercest. Tavora said, "Admiral, I see where this leads. Surly's assassination of Kellanved and Dancer shattered that family irrevocably. But that is precisely where my understanding falters. Surly had taken the Napan cause to its penultimate conclusion. Yet it was not you, not Tashrin, Duerker, Dassam Ulter, or Talk Elder who disappeared. It was Napans," Gamut pointed out, barring Amaron. The Admiral's lined face stretched as he bared his teeth in a humorless grin. He said, "Amaron was half Napan." Gamut stared up at Nock, now as confused as Tavora, and asked, "So it was only the Napans who deserted the new Empress? Yet Surly was of the royal Napan line?" Nock said nothing for a long time. His eyes met Tavora's as he sighed and said, "Shame is a fierce, vigorous poison. To now serve the new Empress, complicity and damnation. Cartheron, Urko, and Amaron were not party to the betrayal, but who would believe them? Who could not help but see them as party to the murderous plot? Yet, in truth, Surly had included none of us in her scheme. She could not afford to. She had the claw, and that was all she needed." Gamut asked, "And where were the Talons in all this?" Then cursed himself and thought, "Ah, gods, too tired." Nock's eyes widened for the first time that night. Then he said, "You've a sharp memory, Fist." Gamut clamped his jaws tight, sensing the adjunct's hard stare fixing on him. That's the hard glare I mentioned last week when you asked if she winced because Gamut had mentioned Felicin. She winced because she was hurt when Felicin was mentioned. Here she's clearly upset, hence the glare.
Yeah. Maybe he's just getting upset with himself, and this is the only one she's actually upset with. But I feel like he's kind of let a few things slip here and there in this first chapter with all of their interactions. And I guess sometimes it makes me think, are these some of those interactions that are making him feel unsure of his capabilities in this role? Not being able to hold back from just blurting something out.
In this case, he probably is actually really tired. You know, it's midnight.
Yeah.
After midnight, actually. So it's probably been going all day.
Yeah.
And he's not that young.
True.
And our brains do get filled with cobwebs as we get older sometimes.
Yeah.
Admiral Nock continued, "I'm afraid I have no answer to that. I was not in Malaz City on that particular night, nor have I made inquiries to those who were. The Talons essentially vanished with Dancer's death. It was widely believed that the Claw had struck them down in concert with the assassinations of Dancer and the Emperor." The adjunct's tone was suddenly curt as she said, "Thank you, Admiral, for your words this night. I will keep you no longer." The man bowed, then strode from the room. Gamut waited with held breath, ready for her fiercest castigation. Instead, she simply sighed and said, "You have much work ahead of you, Fist, in assembling your legion. Best retire now." Gamut said, "Adjunct." He pushed himself to his feet, hesitated, then with a nod strode to the door. Tavora said, "Gamut." He turned and said, "Yes?" Tavora asked, "Where is Tamber?" Gamut replied, "She awaits you in your chambers, Adjunct." Tavora said, "Very well. Good night, Fist." Gamut replied, "And to you, Adjunct."
The history here is incredible. Getting a little bit more info dripped in with this conversation between Nock and Tavora, how some of the old guard fits into the whole Lysine, Kellanved, Dancer saga. It's really cool stuff. And it feels like, even as you're reading, you need to keep your own little notebook and keep track of who did what. Like this mention of Amaron. I think this is the second time his name has been dropped.
Correct.
Yeah, the first in Deadhouse, but still really no information on him. It's like you just gotta, again, make that note and tuck it away for later.
Yeah, we did discuss Urko and Cartheron last week. You are correct. We've only heard of Amaron being mentioned once before, and that was only in passing by Duerker during Deadhouse Gates. He said Amaron is listed among the legendary commanders, including Talk the Elder, Urko Crust, and Cartheron Crust, who disappeared after Empress Lysine took the throne. Duerker also noted that while many assumed they were murdered at Lysine's command, their bodies were never found, leading to a plague of suspicions.
Okay.
Hull is a new name that was just confirmed to be dead by Admiral Nock. I do wonder what happened to her. I guess they said she was killed during the takeover of the island.
And I guess given the nature of what's been going on here, I just had a thought of The Big Lebowski. Given the nature of all this new shit, man. Given the nature of all of this stuff, I kind of wonder, is she actually dead? And maybe Knock is just saying, yeah, she's dead, to kind of forget about her. But I guess maybe not, because if they're husband and wife, why would he want to not be with her? But, well... That was the look.
Married jokes. Oh, man.
Oh, boy. Oh, God. All right.
Buckets of salt water had been sloshed across the cobbled center aisles of the stables, which had the effect of damping the dust and sending the biting flies into a frenzy, as well as making doubly rank the stench of horse piss. Well, I'm not sure that worked as intended.
Yeah. That's an unintended side effect. Gross.
Strings, standing just within the doors, could already feel his sinuses stinging. His searching gaze found 4 figures seated on bound rolls of straw near the far end. Scowling, the bridge burner shifted the weight of the pack on his shoulder, then headed over. As he approached, Strings drawled, "Who was the bright spark missing the old smells of home?" The half-steady warrior named Korik grunted, then said, "That would be Lieutenant Rannall, who then had a quick excuse to leave us for a time." Figures. It's not looking good for Rannall at this point.
Yeah, he's setting himself up for a certain...
Knife in the back.
Yeah. Surprised it already hasn't happened.
Yeah. He's been there like a couple days at best,
Okay.
right? Well, I guess they had the transit over here.
Mm-hmm. We'll give him a few more hours.
Korik had found a flap of hide from somewhere and was cutting long strands from it with a thin-bladed pig sticker. Strings had seen his type before, obsessed with tying things down, or worse, tying things to their bodies. Not just fetishes, but loot, extra equipment, tufts of grass or leafy branches depending on the camouflage being sought. In this case, Strings half expected to see twists of straw sprouting from the man. For centuries, the Seti had fought a protracted war with the city-states of Quan and Lihang, defending the barely inhabitable lands that had been their traditional home. Hopelessly outnumbered and perpetually on the run, they had learned the art of hiding the hard way. But the Seti lands had been pacified for 60 years now. Almost 3 generations had lived in that ambivalent, ambiguous border that was the edge of civilization. The various tribes had dissolved into a single murky nation, with mixed bloods coming to dominate the population. What had befallen them had been the impetus, in fact, for Coltane's rebellion and the Wiccan Wars, for Coltane had clearly seen that a similar fate awaited his own people. It was not, Strings had come to believe, a question of right and wrong. Some cultures were inward-looking, others were aggressive. The former were rarely capable of mustering a defense against the latter, not without metamorphosing into some other thing, a thing twisted by the exigencies of desperation and violence. The original Seti had not even ridden horses, yet now they were known as horse warriors, a taller, darker-skinned, and more morose kind of Wiccan. Strings knew little of Korik's personal history, but he felt he could guess. Half-bloods did not lead pleasant lives. That Korik had chosen to emulate the old Seti ways, whilst joining the Malazan army as a marine rather than a horse warrior, spoke tomes of the clash in the man's scarred soul. Setting down his pack, Strings stood before the 4 recruits and said, "As much as I hate to confess it, I am now your sergeant, officially your 4th squad, one of 3 squads under Lieutenant Rannall's command. The 5th and 6th squads are supposedly on their way over from the tent city west of Erin. We're all in the 9th Company, which consists of 3 squads of heavy infantry, 3 of Marines, and 18 squads of medium infantry. Our commander is a man named Captain Kenneb, and no, I've not met him and know nothing of him. 9 companies in all, making up the 8th Legion, us. The 8th is under the command of Fisk Gamut, who I gather is a veteran who'd retired to the adjunct's household before she became the adjunct." He paused, grimacing at the slightly glazed faces before him, then went on. "But never mind all that. You're in the 4th squad. We've got 1 more coming. But even with that, we're undermanned as a squad. But so are all the others, and before you ask, I ain't privy to the reasons for that. Now, any questions yet?"
I kind of love this, that he's answering the questions he knows are going to be coming already.
You think they're going to remember all that? I don't even remember all that.
Yeah, they're just going, whatever. Maybe they're just like, 4th? Okay, that's the only piece that I remember. But what was Fiddler's or String's rank before? When he was just a bridge burner? I thought he was just a sapper, but I still get the feeling that he's just a natural leader.
Yeah, he was just one of the soldiers. No
Okay.
specified rank.
Hmm.
He was promoted to sergeant here because the recruiter recognized he had past experience, and this force desperately needs some seasoned leadership because everybody's fresh.
Right. Okay.
To your point about him being a natural leader, we saw that on display as he guided Apsalar and Crocus through 7 cities during Deadhouse Gates.
Mm-hmm. I kind of felt like he's older and,
Yeah, wisdom, experience.
Yeah, the wisdom there. This seems slightly different, just that
How?
he's able to handle the sort of command structure of the military. And maybe that is just being a seasoned person, but I don't know. I like that from him. And I guess that, like you said, that is exactly what they need. These guys are all green, fresh, young people. They need that person to kind of ground them, I guess.
Agreed. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
It's like when you go into a car shop and you just got out of school and you have the old guys that they've been a mechanic for 30 years
Mm-hmm.
and they're not just doing brake jobs the whole time. They're
Right.
really good technicians. They're going to help you out, hopefully.
Yeah. Hopefully you've got 1 or 2 of them around. Because not all of them we've experienced were, just because they'd been in the shop a long time.
Why do you think I said they're not just doing brake jobs the whole time?
Your neighbor in the shop.
He's a nice guy, though.
Was he? Oh, talking about.
Yeah.
I thought when you had moved over and was your boy.
We're not talking about. No. 3 men and 1 young woman sat in silence, staring up at him. Strings sighed and pointed to the nondescript soldier sitting to Coric's left. Strings asked, "What's your name?" A bewildered look, then the man asked, "My real name, Sergeant, or the one the drill sergeant in Malice City gave me?" By the man's accent and his pale, stolid features, Strings knew him as being from Li Hang. That being the case, his real name was probably a mouthful. 9 or 10 or even 15 names all strung together. Strings said, "Your new one, soldier." The man replied, "Tar." Coric spoke up, saying, "If you'd seen him on the training ground, you'd understand. Once he's planted his feet behind that shield of his, you could hit him with a battering ram and he won't budge." Strings studied Tar's placid, pallid eyes, then said, "All right, you're now Corporal Tar." The woman who'd been chewing on a straw suddenly choked. Coughing, spitting out pieces of straw, she glared up at Strings with disbelief and said, "What? Him? He never says nothing. Never does nothing unless he's told. Never." Strings cut in laconically. "Glad to hear all that. The perfect corporal, especially that bit about not talking."
Fantastic.
The woman's expression tightened, then unveiled a small sneer as she looked away in feigned disinterest. Strings asked her, "And what's your name, soldier?" The woman asked, "My real name?" Strings said, "I don't care what you used to be called. None of you. Most of us get new ones, and that's just the way it is." Coric growled, "I didn't." Ignoring him, Strings continued, "Your name, lass?" Sour contempt at the word lass. Coric said, "Drill sergeant named her Smiles." Strings asked, "Smiles?" Coric said, "Aye, she never does." Eyes narrowing, Strings swung to the last soldier, a rather plain young man wearing leathers but no weapon. He asked, "And yours?" The man said, "Bottle." Strings demanded, "Who was your drill sergeant?" Coric leaned back as he replied, "Braventooth." Strings said, "Braventooth? That bastard's still alive?" Smiles muttered, "It was hard to tell at times." Coric added, until his temper snapped, "Just ask Corporal Tar there. Braventooth spent near 2 bells pounding on him with a mace. Couldn't get past the shield." Strings glared at his new corporal and asked, "Where'd you learn that skill?" The man shrugged and said, "Don't know. Don't like getting hit." Strings asked, "Well, do you ever counterattack?" Tar frowned and said, "Sure, when they're tired." Strings was silent for a long moment. Braventooth. He was dumbfounded. The bastard was grizzled back when the whole naming thing began. It had been Braven who'd started it. Braven who'd named most of the bridge burners. Whiskey Jack, Trots, Mallet, Hedge, Blend, Picker, Toes. Fiddler himself had avoided the new name through his basic training. It had been Whiskey Jack who'd named him on that first ride through Raraku.
This is another fantastic piece of lore, where the naming started, or at least who started it.
Agreed. This is much appreciated. I'm really curious how Erikson comes up with these names, because that is such a challenging thing to do. If you ever run a D&D campaign, all the NPCs you have to name, it's rough.
Mm-hmm. I thought I had seen a little piece of him in an interview talking about the naming convention, and in some cases it sounded like the name came first, and then he started to wrap the personality around the name, instead of the other way around, like coming up with a character and then trying to figure out a name for them. But either way, this is something he's really good at. Like, the names are just fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Strings shook his head, glanced sidelong at Tar, then said, "You should be a heavy infantryman, Corporal, with a talent like that. The Marines are supposed to be fast, nimble, avoiding the toe-to-toe whenever possible, or, if there's no choice, making it quick." Tar shrugged and said, "I'm good with a crossbow." Quark added, "And a fast loader." It was that made Braven decide to make him a Marine. Smile spoke, "So who named Braventooth, Sergeant?" Strings thought, "I did, after the bastard left one of his in my shoulder the night of the brawl. The brawl we all later denied happening. Gods, so many years ago now. I wonder what kicked that brawl off."
Yeah.
That's got to be a story.
I would love to hear that story.
Oh, yeah.
Makes you wonder if that's in a different series somewhere, or another one that's just kind of left in the background and you get to wonder about it.
Yeah. Strings shifted his attention back to the man named Bottle and said, "I have no idea. Where's your sword, soldier?" Bottle said, "I don't use one." Strings asked, "Well, what do you use?" The man shrugged and said, "This and that." Strings said, "Well, Bottle, someday I'd like to hear how you got through basic training without picking up a weapon. No, not now. Not tomorrow either, not even next week. For now, tell me what I should be using you for." Bottle replied, "Scouting. Quiet work." Strings said, as in sneaking up behind someone. "What do you do then? Tap him on the shoulder? Never mind." He thought, "The man smells like a mage to me, only he doesn't want to advertise it. Fine, be that way. We'll twist it out of you sooner or later."
I love this interaction with Strings, asking people their name, answering the wrong. It's like, I don't care. I don't want to know about that. Like this thing with Bottle, like, I don't want to know now either. Not tomorrow, maybe not ever. It's funny, the irritation that they have with all of this. It's very funny to me.
It's like talking to kids, almost.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Where you're asking a question, trying to get an answer, and you're not getting what you need out of them. You may not have the patience to properly explain in a way to get the right information out of them, and it just makes the situation worse.
Yeah, I like it. I also wondered if this is Strings being a smart soldier, that he can kind of suss out Bottle being a mage, or if this is part of his being an adept, that he can kind of sense it.
He does get bad feelings, so he definitely has some sensitivity to magic. I don't know if Bottle's using any, so I'm not sure how that would play into this. Mm-hmm. Maybe right now it's just his experience is telling him, because he knows Quick Ben, and Quick Ben doesn't want to get seen or heard, or he wants to be kind of behind everything instead of out front as like a high mage. So maybe he's just saying, okay, I get the feeling that you're in that boat, kind of like Quick Ben.
Pattern recognition or something. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Smile said, "I do the same kind of work, but I finish things with these." She settled a forefinger on the pommel of one of the two thin-bladed knives at her belt. String said, "So there's only 2 soldiers in this outfit who can actually fight toe-to-toe?" Quark pointed out, "You said one more is coming." Smiles added, "We can all handle crossbows, except for Bottle." They heard voices from outside the commandeered stables, then figures appeared in the doorway, 6 in all, burdened with equipment. A deep voice called out, "You put the latrine trench outside the barracks for Hood's sake. Bastards don't teach you anything these days?"
This feels so Malazan Marines to me. Very good at battle tactics, but complete idiots in other ways. And the more we get to know them, the more these ridiculous situations start to arise.
Yeah, the banter is amazing that exposes all of this. But in this case, Rannall, the people didn't have anything to do with it,
Yeah. But it's still, like you said, the banter. It's just these interactions. It doesn't matter, I guess, who said it. We're going to pick on somebody and you're going to take the blame for it. It's good.
String said, "Compliments of Lieutenant Rannall." The soldier who'd spoken was in the lead as the squad approached. The man said, "Right, met him." Strings thought, "Aye, nothing more to be said on that." Then he said, "I'm Sergeant Strings, we're the 4th. A second soldier, grinning through his bushy red beard, said, "Well, hey, someone can count after all. These Marines are full of surprises." The first soldier said, "5th. There was a strange burnished cast to the man's skin, making Strings doubt his initial guess that he was Falari. Then he noted an identical sheen to the red-bearded soldier, as well as on a much younger man. The first soldier said, "I'm Gessler, temporarily sergeant of this next-to-useless squad." The red-bearded man dropped his pack to the floor, then said, "We was coastal guards, me and Gessler in truth. I'm Stormy, but Coltane made us Marines." Gessler corrected, "Not Coltane. Captain Lull it was. Queen harbor his poor soul." String simply stared at the 2 men. Stormy scowled, his face darkening. He demanded, "Got a problem with us?" Strings muttered, "Adjutant Stormy, Captain Gessler, Hood's rattling bones." Gessler said, We ain't none of those things anymore. Like I said, I'm now a sergeant, and Stormy's my corporal. And the rest here, there's Truth, Tavos Pond, Sands, and Pella. Truth's been with us since Hisar, and Pella was a camp guard at the Odotaral mines. Only handfuls survived the uprising there, from what I gather.
So, a quick reminder, Pella was actually a pretty pivotal role during the escape of Hebrek Bodden and Felison from Skullcup. He seemed like an initial minor character, but he actually saved Felison and was kind of like a liaison to get them out of Skullcup and help in their escape.
Yeah, he was always quoting things, trying to give hints.
Right.
Trying to get her out of her lifestyle that she was having.
Right. When she was smoking that durang and stuff, and he was trying to make sure that she stayed clean. But I think it's a little unclear what motivated him to do that, if he's being driven by somebody else or if that's just kind of his own personality coming through.
Wasn't it confirmed that he had outside contact?
There may be some illusion. I don't remember exactly what that is.
Either way, it feels like we just got dumped with a whole host of major characters from Deadhouse Gates.
Mm-hmm. You're loving this, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, this is beautiful.
Yeah.
Stormy's small eyes had narrowed suspiciously. He nudged his sergeant and said, "Strings, is it? Hey Gessler, think we should have done that? Changed our names, I mean. This Strings here is Old Guard, as sure as I'm a demon in my dear father's eye." Gessler muttered, "Let the bastard keep whatever name he wants. All right, squad, find some place to drop your stuff. The 6th should be showing up any time. And the lieutenant, too. Word is, we're all being mustered out to face the adjunct's lizard eyes in a day or two." The soldier Gessler had named Tavos Pond, a tall, dark, mustached man who was probably Corelry, said, "So we should polish our equipment, Sergeant?" Gessler disinterestedly replied, "Polish whatever you like, just not in public. As for the adjunct, if she can't handle a few scuffed-up soldiers, then she won't last long. It's a dusty world out there, and the sooner we blend in, the better." Strings sighed. He was feeling more confident already. He faced his own soldiers and said, "Enough sitting on that straw. Start spreading it around to soak up the horse piss." He faced Gessler again and said, "A word with you in private?"
Feeling confident indeed. He's just joined up with some of the great ones, hasn't he?
Yes, it's amazing to have Gessler and Stormy back in the story.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be great watching them go through this book together.
Mm-hmm.
Gessler nodded, saying, "Let's head back outside." Moments later, the two men stood on the cobbled courtyard of the estate that had once housed a well-off local merchant and was now the temporary bivouac for Ranel's squads. The lieutenant had taken the house proper for himself, leaving Strings wondering what the man did with all those empty rooms. They said nothing for a moment, then Strings grinned and said, "I can picture Whiskey Jack's jaw dropping the day I tell him you was my fellow sergeant in the new 8th Legion." Gessler scowled, saying, "Whiskey Jack. He was busted down to sergeant before I was, the bastard. Mind you, I then made corporal, so I beat him after all." Strings said, "Except now you're a sergeant again, while Whiskey Jack's an outlaw. Try beating that." Gessler muttered, "I just might." The courtyard was empty, but even so, Strings quietly asked, "Got concerns about the adjunct?" Gessler said, "Met her, you know. Oh, she's as cold as Hood's forked tongue. She impounded my ship." Strings said, "You had a ship?" Gessler said, "By rights of salvage, I was the one who brought Coltane's wounded to Erin, and that's the thanks I get." Strings said, "You could always punch her in the face. That's what you usually end up doing to your superiors sooner or later." Gessler getting punched in the face by Coltane is one of those legendary moments through these books.
Oh, yeah. That's one of those, like you always say, like a core memory, right?
Mm-hmm.
That lingers. Yeah.
Bring us back to earlier in the conversation about the adjacency to ascendancy. That's what I was alluding to.
Mm-hmm.
When these things happen to these individuals and it's not immediately clear what is going on, you know, they're stronger, they're more solid. When Gessler got punched by Coltane broke his hand. And Coltane, you saw what the magnitude of his soul was by those crows coming in the epilogue of Deadhouse Gates. So that says a lot about what happens to these people when this stuff happens to them. So I am curious what some of those other effects were for these people that were living in Deadhouse from the Old Guard.
Yeah, good questions, and I hope we get to see more of what those little things are. And maybe they do start to crop up as we get deeper into the books.
It can also explain some of the legendary stuff that they were capable of doing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
They're the kind of people that, like, if you're playing a video game, they're the hero character that is leading your other troops. Or, you know, I'm thinking of Warcraft 3, where you have the hero. You had your other troops, and then the hero was leveling up and more powerful than everything.
Yeah. I guess it makes me wonder about when Nock listed all of those people and made that comment of, wow, these are all legendary people. Maybe they became legendary because of all of these gifts It just makes it a little bit easier for them to distinguish themselves from everybody else because they have longer life. They're a little bit stronger, a little bit faster. They can't get sick. Like all those kinds of things start to roll into making them that legendary persona.
Yeah, and then with the right coach, too.
Yeah.
You got a Belichick in there.
That's right.
The Emperor, for all his faults, was capable of leading this group of people. I mean, they started on an island, and look at the Empire now.
Yeah, for as crazy as he was, he had a knack for it, I guess.
Gessler said, I could at that, and this is in response to Fiddler recommending he punch somebody in the face. Punch the adjunct in the face. Yeah. I'd have to get past Gamut, of course. The point I was making is this. She's never commanded anything more than a damn noble household, and here she's been handed 3 legions and told to reconquer an entire subcontinent. He glanced sidelong at Strings, then went on. There wasn't many Falari made it into the bridge burners. Bad timing, I think, but there was one. Strings said, I, and I'm him. After a moment, Gessler grinned and held out his hand. He said, Strings. Fiddler. Sure. They clasped wrists. To Strings, the other man's hand and arm felt like solid stone. Gessler said, There's an inn down the street. We need to swap stories, and I guarantee you, mine's got yours beat by far. Strings sighed and said, Oh, Gessler, I think you're in for a surprise.
That is hilarious, because they both have an epic story to tell.
Who do you think is stronger? So you have Fiddler with the Path of Hands and Tremor lore, and the Grawl chasing them through the sandstorm in Raraku. Mm-hmm. Then you have going into the Nascent, the Salanda, going through that portal, getting annealed in Talon. Which one of those do you think is actually... Can you compare them?
I feel like Fiddler's story is probably a little bit more epic. Even though Gessler and Stormy, Truth, they went through all that. They seem to be on their path to ascendancy, possibly. But they had Culp. They had other people with them on their journey, even though going through the Nascent and everything was really cool, very epic. Fiddler has some sensitivity to magics in some capacity, but he's a sapper. Not to say that he's just a sapper. But it was him, and it was, Apsalar, and Crocus on that Path of Hands. Who else did they have? Fiddler had just Crocus. Did he have Iskarl Pust with him?
They had Ikarium and Mappo.
Oh, they did. So they had a significant amount of help.
Towards the end, yeah. They did stay with Iskarl Pust, actually, now that you mention it. I think they got rescued by them. Because her father was there. He was servant.
Yeah. So I guess they both had help in some way. It wasn't just... on their own.
I'm talking about the journey. So forget about the help or the assistance and all that kind of stuff. Between the two journeys, they're both pretty legendary. I don't know if you can really compare them.
It might be hard, but in my mind, I kind of think Fiddler's story is more epic. You know, the Trail of Tales.
Trail of Tears. Or trail
the Path of Hands.
Path of Hands, yeah.
The Path of Hands, that seems a little bit more epic with all the Soul Taken and the Divers. To me, all going to try and get to that Azoth house to claim it or whatever was going on. I thought that was more epic for me.
Interesting, because when I look at it, I'm thinking Salanda with the heads and the bodies that are frozen in time. Then to get out of there, first of all, they have that mage that causes the welt between the Warrens. They have to seal that welt. The Talani mass show up on the boat. Then they seal that. To get out of there, you have this giant undead soul-taken dragon that they follow through.
Yeah.
Going through that, they end up at the end of the chain of dogs, man.
They're both really epic. And I'm kind of wondering, is this the distinction between I like a filet mignon or I like a...
That's what I'm thinking.
A ribeye. Like, they're both fantastic.
Yeah.
But it's just like your taste for which one is better.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is a ribeye better than a filet mignon?
Not for me. Loves a ribeye, and I don't really like it as much. I prefer actually like a New York strip or a shell. The ribeye has a little too much fat for my liking.
Okay.
But I still prefer like a strip or a shell over a filet mignon because I do need a little bit in there, but yeah, for me, not the ribeye.
Yeah, I mean, filet mignon is good, but I'm a ribeye guy. That's a very good analogy. Personal preference.
Yeah. So these two have never formally met before, but being veterans, I suspect that they have heard of each other. It seems like they have. From this interaction.
When you've been around long enough, word starts getting around. And these are the type of soldiers that kind of are the halo names that carry an army.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's almost like having a star player that carries a team. That's kind of how I look at it.
I also love the constant reverse promotion that's happening in the Malazan army. These are all solid veterans, but they keep getting, quote, busted down. But all that means to me is that they're right where they need to be the most effective.
Yeah, and I think it was mentioned that Lacine might have intentionally done this for some of these.
For like Dujek and Whiskey Jack?
Yeah. And then what was the saying, feet facing skyward on the ladder? I think Stormy said that in Deadhouse Games.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. Forgot about that.
Mm-hmm. All right, and thus the chapter ends. That was a great way to end the chapter.
Yeah, love it.
Nice palate cleanser.
Mm-hmm.
For standout moments.
The conversation with Admiral Nock, there was so much history. Getting to hear how some of the old guard actually came into the picture was really great stuff.
I absolutely love getting those types of info dumps, being the lore nerd that I am for these books.
Mm-hmm.
It's all stuff I want to learn more about.
Yeah. Also, that the Dead House had given some of the enhancements. I did not know that before. That was really fun to learn about.
It gave them unnatural long life. I just watched The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
They got the 6 demon bags, too. It sounds like, you know, they can see things no one else can see, do things no one else can do. Very close to ascendancy, it seems like.
Mm-hmm. I also loved hearing about the beginning of the new names for the Marines, because there's such a central thing, at least for me, about these characters.
It is such a core piece of the mythology of the Malazan Marines. It makes them very memorable because their personalities, like you said, they kind of fit into the names that's given them. So It's great.
Yeah. Getting reunited with Gessler, Stormy, and Truth, it's a great feeling seeing this squad fill out with these new characters, as well as these ones that we've already known.
This is a stacked crew here.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to seeing more of the personalities of the new recruits as well, because how could they not be great? They're Malazan Marines. Some great dialogue already.
Exactly. It's like Strings has rolled natural 18s on everything here. He's got the setup.
All right. Great job today, Dane.
Good job, Kamraun.
You got any final thoughts before we drop off here?
Without trying to give too much away, these new Marines that are squatted up with Strings, really, really great characters. These are names that you need to remember. This is just a fantastic crew.
Yes, it's great. And I'm curious what the 6th squad, who they're going to be made of as well. If we know anybody or if they're all new, we'll see.
Looking forward to it.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week.